Kick it off. Let's kick it off. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey Chats. I've started these series because I really felt we wanted to give back to our LinkedIn followership with all the connections that we all have all around the world. We wanted to share some tips, some insights, some golden nuggets of how we've all grown businesses, you know, to the success level that it's at. And we always feel that let's pay it forward. Let's collaborate. Like I've just been talking to my guest today. It's so important that we all share best practices. So I'm absolutely delighted to totally welcome my guest today, who's got an amazing, unique story of success, Mr. Dave Sanderson. Hello.
Hello, Susie. How are you today?
Great. And you're over in which part of the USA? St. Petersburg, near Florida?
That's right. It's the south of the USA. That's correct.
Fantastic. So we're leapfrogging across the pond from the UK to you guys, and we can see lovely view there over to a lake. You're bringing some good feeling of water and sunshine and everything because it's raining here in the UK as normal. As normal. Let me just tell you a little bit about Dave and why he has been uber successful. So after nearly 35 years in sales and sales leadership with roles in companies such as ADP, Peoplesoft, KPMG and Oracle, Dave founded his executive coaching and personal leadership firm, Dave Sanderson Speaks International, in 2014. Literally, he's now a sought after international speaker. He works with established and emerging leaders to help them find their distinct advantage, aligning with their purpose through employing their personal leadership skills, igniting their performance through focused execution, resourcefulness, and obviously gratitude. Wonderful. This is again unique to you, this next bit, Dave. On January the 15th, 2009, Dave was one of the last passengers off the plane that crashed into the Hudson River, best known, as we all know, the Miracle on the Hudson, considered to be the most successful ditching in aviation history. Dave has written a book, Moments Matter, and we'll hear how we can get that later, which details the lessons learned from the Miracle on the Hudson and how one defining moment can create a lifetime of purpose. So you can create your own flight plan for your future. I love that metaphor. Dave hosts a show on the Alexa platform for Amazon and has done TEDx talk, Bouncing Back. So again, I'm sure we can check it all out. Dave was actually the director, and that's where we first met, the director of security for Tony Robbins for over 10 years, and has recently been named one of the top 100 leadership speakers in Inc.com. Dave has spoken at countless fundraisers. And I think this is why I want to acknowledge it. You've personally raised over $14 million for the American Red Cross, which is absolutely phenomenal. And that's why I wanted you as one of my speakers, Dave. It's just incredible. So welcome again. I can't say I'm delighted to absolutely have you with you. Yes.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you.
No, it is really good. We've known each other a long time, and it's nice to connect along life's journeys. It is. So let's crack straight in with these questions. I think I just want you to briefly explain your unique story of what happened, you know, for 5 minutes on the Hudson and why it's changed your life.
Well, thank you. It was definitely a changing moment. As you know, I was not only working with Tony as head of security, but I was also working with the company Oracle. I was in charge of their consumer packaged goods. So I was traveling a lot for business. Mm-hmm. And so that day we were at the end of a 3-day business trip, ended in New York. And that morning we started at 5 a.m. because we were working in a distribution center. We worked at manufacturing plants and distribution centers, which opened up early. So we got there early because we wanted to see the production and operation line. So we got done early. So about 10 o'clock that morning is when I called our travel agent. I worked with her, and she put me on flight 1549. I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. I was scheduled to be on the 5 o'clock flight, and I had a first class seat at 5 o'clock. But I gave it up for seat 15A on flight 1549 on January 15th. So there's something around the number 15.
I think so.
We're trying to figure that out right now. But nothing extraordinary about, it was 11 degrees and snowing that day, but that's not unusual about New York. It's the winter. But as we know now, about 60 seconds after we took off is when I heard the explosion. And I never heard anything on a plane like that before. So it got my attention. So I looked up and saw fire coming out underneath the left wing. So I knew something had happened, but So he's like all of us who fly, we fly a lot, so things happen on a plane. And you know that planes have multiple engines. So that's, candidly, I didn't think it was a big deal, and nobody else really thought it was a big deal because we were just going back to the airport. But as we know now, that's not what happened. Both engines were knocked out simultaneously, which is another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot. And I truly believe that we would have heard boom, boom. The thought process may have gone to this may be a terrorist attack. There may be something going on. But it was one boom, so it's like, okay, we got another engine, and we'll just circle back. But, you know, as we were circling back, I looked out the window, I saw something I'd never seen. It was the skyline of Manhattan. And I'm like, I've never seen this before, up close and personal, the skyline of Manhattan. All of a sudden, you're crossing over a bridge, which now we know it's the George Washington Bridge, and you clear it by only 400 feet, and the bridge is 600 feet. So you're roughly 1,000 feet this climb. So we were actually, one of the things that doesn't get talked about, we cleared the bridge, which 400 feet's not that high up over a bridge, because you look down, you can see people's faces. That's how close we were.
Oh my gosh.
So we were about a minute from impact, and that last moment is, you sort of have to put everything together really quick. It's like, you got to put together your game plan, but also it's like, you got to get things straight. I mean, you're probably not coming back. You're probably over. So I was praying to say, you know, just get me down safely, but also just, you know, take me to a place that I can impact somebody else someplace, whether it's in heaven or someplace else. Because about a minute later, we crashed into the river. And it was a hard hit. We know now that the plane hit perfectly, but it was a hard hit. And so I lunged forth and back and looked up and looked out the window. I said, I'm alive, but all of a sudden the plane is sinking in water. So yes, you survived the crash, but you may not survive the water. And this is 36-degree Fahrenheit water. So it's roughly 0 degrees Celsius water, roughly. So immediately you felt it. And to me, I was about halfway back. I was in C-15A. So water was about knee deep immediately. Gosh. So in the back of the plane, it was about chest deep. In front of the plane, it was more like ankle deep, but water was coming in. So it's like, you know, my game plan was to get up to the aisle, get up and get out. But, you know, all of a sudden I got to the aisle, it was my time. And all of a sudden I heard something in my head that changed the entire day for me. I heard my mother. And my mom had passed away in 1997, but there was something she would tell me when I was a child that just came to me and heard, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And I tell people now, after I thought about that, my mother never told me what to do. She made me make decisions for myself. And, you know, I could make either decision. I could go or stay. But I was alive, and I knew that I was okay, but I didn't know if anybody else was okay in the back because things were going so fast. So I climbed over the seats to get behind everybody else. And that's why in the back of the plane, it was about chest deep water. And these people were in chest deep water, 36-degree water. So I got behind everybody, just making my way out like everybody else, just to make sure everybody could get out. And all of a sudden, you know, based on the impact, luggage is flown out, luggage is floating, you're chest deep in the water, and it's dark because the plane's actually like this, not like flat like you see, it's actually underwater. So when I got to the door, the first thing I saw was on the right was 10F. I saw light, I'm like, I'm out of here. But when I got to the door, I looked out, and it was an amazing sight. There was no room on the wing. It was already filled. There was no room on the boat. It was already filled. So that's why I was in the plane 7 minutes waist deep in 36-degree water, because I couldn't get out. But people were already being rescued. And I think that's one of the things about it. It's amazing, the response, right? People were already there being rescued within 2 to 3 minutes. But that's why I was in the plane for roughly 7 minutes waist deep in the water until I felt the plane shift. And the first thing I thought was Titanic. I'm like, this thing's going down. Yeah. And I found out later what happened is one of the tugboats were on the rescue actually hit the front of the plane as they were backing out, but it shook the plane. So I thought, now it's Titanic, I'm out of here. That's why I jumped in and swam in 36-degree water. That was the longest 10-yard swim in my life because it was 36-degree water, but not only was it 36-degree water, Susie, it was also jet fuel in the water. And that's why you see me now wearing glasses.
Very dangerous.
So I got jet fuel in my eyes. And that's why I wear glasses today. But that's how I got to the ferry. I had to swim for my life. And then there's a whole nother story now, because now you're out, but you're not safe yet because you've been in water for that long. So we have time for the entire story, but that's how I got off the plane. But it was an amazing experience because, number one, you don't expect to be in a plane crash, but number two, you got 36-degree water. So there's really two parts of the story. There's getting down, where the crew gets all the credit, and getting out is where the teamwork comes in. And as you know, as we work with Tony and all this, I was just able to employ those skills that I learned all these years that coalesced in that one moment. State management, communication, leadership, everything came together in one moment. That's why I call that defining moment. And all these things you and I learn, all these moments, that's why I call my book Moments Matter. All these moments are there for a reason. And you may never have to call upon them, but there may be that one moment like I had that they all have to come together. And because it changes your life.
I mean, I'm getting like goosebumps. I can't even begin to feel, obviously we all know this story, it's written in history books, but you lived it. And, you know, as you said, we could talk for another 2 hours. You can give us all the finer distinctions, but you were one of the last people off. You helped people to get off. And as you say, yes, the crew probably, and the film was made, and obviously the captain, they, I suppose, have to take a lot of the glory because that's their job. But it's people like you that was one of the last people off that helped so many people against your own health. And, you know, it's amazing. And I must get that book. I haven't got it because we know each other, but I must get that book because you're absolutely right. At that moment, you know, I think Tony says it, in our moment of decisions, our destiny is shaped. You just brought everything together to help people. But I had no idea, obviously I know you ended up in the hospital, that you could have died by being in the water, let alone with the jet fuel and everything. Yeah.
There were 2 points, Susie, where they thought that I may not make it. First was on the ferry, and second, when I was on the floor in the triage center. And that's when, Kaylee, that was the moment I thought I was dead. Because what happened, the short story is, I was on the floor, I was naked. I had nothing but underwear on because they stripped everything off. And somebody came up, asked for my name and date of birth. They wrote it on the card, they put it around my ankle. And the only thing I could associate was the TV show MASH. When they tagged your toe, you're dead.
Yeah.
So my association immediately was, I'm dead. I didn't make it. I'm like the movie Ghost. I'm just watching it play out, right? And that's exactly, I thought I was dead. Fortunately, I wasn't, but my blood pressure was out of control, and that's what happened. It was 190 over 120 and said, you got to go now. You got to have a heart attack or stroke, and that's when everything else started moving so fast for me.
Well, I mean, it's just incredible. And as you say, you recovered from that. You decided to completely change your life, your future, career. And since then, you know, we're going to hear a little bit insights. You have built a phenomenal business on the back of making different decisions now, but using your experience, your journey to help so many others through your public speaking, through your, you know, guidance and your mentoring and coaching. I mean, it's incredible what you've done all around the world. We've just been speaking before we recorded that you speak internationally, you speak in Europe, and, you know, you're bringing your gifts definitely, Dave, to the world because of your journey, but also because of the chapter before that. You know, you've had huge experience in leadership. So just to share now with our listeners, I really believe that successful people do definitely think differently, and they do definitely do things differently. I'm sure you would agree with me. So please share 3 of the values that you felt have kept you going along this journey, even through the adversity to the success.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I really think it starts with my first mentor back in 1983 when I got out of college. And the short version is his name was Bill. And the first time I met him, Susie, he wore a flannel shirt and drove a pickup truck. So your association is just a good old boy. But he owned 80 movie theaters in North and South Carolina.
Wow.
His nickname was the Sam Walton of Charlotte, but he took me under his wing. And for 14 years, even when I was with Tony for a little bit while I was crossover with Tony, he was teaching me these life lessons and these success principles that he built his business on. He was an entrepreneur. And so right before he passed away in 1997, he asked me to come to his office here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I sat down with him. He went to his big desk. He had a big roller desk. He pulled out these notes. He said, I want to give you these notes. He pictured me. He had lung cancer and he was dying. And he said, these are the notes I wrote when my mentor gave me how I needed to do it in 1929. And these are handwritten notes. And he said, this is what I've been telling you over the last 14 years. It's teaching me these, but he'd tell me through stories, right? And how he implemented it was just tremendous. So if you look at there's 12 of them, but if you look at 3 things that I learned that have helped me a lot. Number one, and you got to remember, this mentality started in 1929, was always have an optimistic perspective. And he told me a story about, in 1929 during the Depression.
Yeah, it was tough times.
Depression, he was building a business. But Franklin Roosevelt would come on with these fireside chats, and he was always optimistic. He said that's what led people at that point is people had an optimistic perspective. So he always instilled that. He said, He was telling me these stories, right? And so number one was have an optimistic perspective. Number two is, and I wrote about this in a recent book, is he insisted, and this is one thing Tony talks about too, but he had told me to always have a round table. But the way he structured his round table was he had some people who were living, like Franklin Roosevelt, but he also had people like Abraham Lincoln that he could learn certain skills from. So he said, and so number two is I built my own virtual round table.
Nice.
People. And I have certain skill sets that I call upon and read about. So if I need help in the financial area, like a lot of us do, I got somebody there I can call and or read about. So number two is having that. But number three, which I think is probably the most important, is taking personal responsibility. And he was always about me taking, it was my choice, like Tony talks about, it's my choice, right? He said that before Tony said it. He just said, take personal responsibility. So I think those three things have helped me as I transition from the corporate world into starting my own business, because as you know, as you start your own business, I did it backwards. I was really good at sales. I could drive revenue, but I had no clue on the administrative side.
Yeah, ditto.
So I ran into a lot of problems on the administrative side. So I could drive all the revenue I wanted, but money was leaking out the back end faster than I could do anything about it. So you learn these lessons, right? But I would say staying optimistic. Number two, having your virtual roundtable. Number three, always take personal responsibility for everything you do. Probably three of the primary ones that I'm actually going to be writing about in my next book.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to that as well coming out. Those are great. And I also believe that there's an art of leadership that is unique to us, that is definitely unique to us. And I think that becomes our own winning success formulas. We were talking earlier before we recorded Success Leaves Clues. It does, but we all can touch point our successes and along our own timeline. So I would say to you, share 3 insights that you feel have been your strengths through growing your business.
Well, number one, I'll go back to 1999. And this is when I was with Tony. And at that point, I was assistant security director. But one of the jobs I had was and you probably remember the Life Masteries in Hawaii.
Yeah, I do.
One of the jobs I had for Tony at that point was escorting people from the airport in Kona to the resort.
Yeah.
And one of the people I got to escort was Norman Schwarzkopf.
Wow. I remember I was there at that event when he spoke. Right. Yeah.
Four-star general. Here I am with a 4-star general. Never been around a general. Very intimidating, right? But I was escorting, and no one ever talks to a general. But I asked Norman Schwarzkopf a question. I said, sir, may I ask you, we were driving from the airport. I said, may I ask you a question? He goes, he said, do you really want to ask it? Do you really want to know? I said, I just got one question. He said, go ahead. He said, how did you win the war so quickly? I was asking that. He goes, no one's ever asked me that question. He said, do you really want to know? I said, yeah. He said, every day I would go into the theater and people would come to me with their problems. Women had to wear headgear. They couldn't drive tanks. They had to pray 5 times a day. But I kept reinforcing to my troops, how does this contribute to kicking Saddam out of Kuwait? He said, leadership was keeping people focused on the mission. So that's number one, staying on focus on the mission, because all of us go sideways.
Yeah.
I mean, you go side. I'm sure I don't know if you do. I do constantly.
We do go off tangent. Yeah, we do.
Go off tangent, right? So number one, the part of leadership is that. Number two is being congruent, right? You got to walk your talk. And if I'm not walking my talk and speaking the truth, and if I'm saying something, I better be able to do it. I'll be able to show people how to do it. So that's number two. But number three, and we talk about, this is one of the things I talk about in my TED Talk, is the art of being able to communicate visually, auditory, and kinesthetically through different modalities. And I think part of what I've learned is, and one of the strengths that I have is I can identify quickly with people. How do they communicate? And I will go into their modality so I can build rapport quickly. And part of the art of leadership is being able to understand that. And once you understand how somebody communicates and you're side by side instead of adversarial, you can walk down the path and you will not only work together, but you will gain things so much quicker because you're in tandem. I would say those are the 3 things I would tell you. That's true alignment leadership. I agree with you. That's great. I think we don't do enough listening to, as you say, the modality, but giving them a chance to speak builds rapport deeper.
then we can align and pace and lead and move forward and everything like that. Those are wonderful, Dave. Thank you so much for that. You know, you and I know that everybody we grew up with this mantra almost, that everybody has the potential inside them to reach their level of greatness, their level of genius, whatever it is, and lead a happy, fulfilled life. Even though we've all been through the ups and downs, as we've already said, what would be 2 distinctions that you know people could master even better, you know, that we've discovered along the way, and we want to share them to help them grow? What could be 2 things?
Well, one of the things, I'll start off with Tony, and I'll go back to Bill. You know, and Tony says this, and it's true. And he used to share this with us in our little inner circle and behind stage. Is, you know, you got to make it a must, right? You have to make it a must. And so many people I see want to dabble, right? And I'll give you an example. People call me a lot about, how'd you do it? How'd you go from being in sales and doing with Tony and being on stages so quickly? How did you do it? And I asked the question Schwarzkopf said, do you really want to know, or do you want to just trying to find out, right? Because people want to dabble, they want the shortcuts. There's no shortcuts. There's no shortcut. I don't care who you are.
Nope.
I don't care if you're Tony, if you're Warren Buffett, I don't care who you are. It takes time and persistence to get to that point. So
yes,
first thing, but you got to burn the boats, like Tony, you got to burn the boats, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so, and one of the things that Bill taught me is that likewise is you have to really, you know, he always talked about not giving up, right? It's always about persistence. He always mentioned that because there were times, and he told me a story about a time in, I think it's 1942 or 1943, when they were opening up theaters so quickly, because the war was coming to an end, and things were starting to come together, right? And he was opening up, but he told me this story once about, you know, he made his money early about selling popcorn, not movies.
Incredible.
Right? He figured it out, but he was opening, but they didn't have popcorn. He said he was going to get angry, but you know, his focus was he has to persist through this. He had to get the right people on the right plane. So sort of like on the plane.
Yeah.
Right people on the right seat on the plane made all the difference that day.
Good to Great, Jim Collins' book. Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I tell people, if you look at I'll use what happened on the plane that day as an example. If you look at that plane, the difference in that plane compared to other planes is this. And it came to light for me when I flew to Orlando, Florida from Charlotte. And I was in Orlando, and I have the honor now to talk to captains. I just get that opportunity, right? So I do. And I talked to a captain, and we were talking about this because he said, let me tell you, it wouldn't have mattered. He said, if I could do the same thing out of Orlando, the captain did, right? Get the plane up and land it, right? It doesn't matter because he said the passenger makeup of a plane is so different. And he said, look at the passenger makeup of a plane coming out of Orlando. It's usually families, tourists, with few business people. He said, look at your plane. I said, yeah, 90% of the people on that plane were business people who make decisions, can handle themselves. The passenger makeup of the plane or the team and the dynamics of the team make all the difference.
Yes, they do.
It's all the difference, right? That day, if we were to have a different passenger makeup on that plane, we may not have the same outcome, even if you could get it down. Because everybody, the mindsets are different. The actions are different. Ownership, I talk about taking personal responsibility, right? People took personal responsibility that day, unknowingly worked together as a team on the mission. It's an amazing story. Amazing story.
It is. But it's a true story of team alignment, success, outcome based. I mean, you could talk 100 stories from that as an example. That, I mean, and you will, and you probably got 100 books in you, Dave. Not just one and then another coming out, you know, because you could go off at so many angles to help people.
Tangents, that's correct.
I mean, that's fantastic. So talking about books, you know, we've all read so many books over our professional journey, and we've listened to podcasts. And I know different books influence us at different stages of our lives, but if you could recommend one book or a podcast that's definitely influenced you, what would that book be and why?
I'll tell you exactly that book. There's a lot of books that I read. I mean, I talk about leadership books, but the one book that's helped me probably more than anything else is The Fourth Turning by Strauss and Howell.
Oh, I've not read that. And
the reason why is this, and actually it came from, I was actually with Tony and we were in Fiji. We were talking about stuff. He said, you need to read this book. All right. So I said, you know, I'll get the book, right? But it's a book that talks about, you know, how things are cyclical and how you go through seasons, right? And you can predict and anticipate what's going to happen next by looking at history.
Yep.
So I started looking at this and reading this, and also I could forecast and anticipate, because if you know one thing about Tony, And I tell people this, and one thing I'm trying to really develop is what he values most in most people is the ability to anticipate.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why, and he gave me that little, said, read this book. It gave me the opportunity to learn how to anticipate. So when things start happening around me, I could see 2 steps ahead.
What a gift.
Whether it's financially or within my physical body and things like that. So I think that's the one book that sort of changed the way I thought and helped me sort of think where I need to go instead of where I'm at right now. That's why when I started building my business, I'm like, where's this going to go in 2 or 3 years from now? Not right now.
That's a wonderful, very key distinction, because so many entrepreneurs or business people start a business and they just think in the now. They can't even think 2 steps forward, or let alone 2 years forward or 20 years forward. But we've been taught to start with the end game in mind, right, and then work back. But I love the anticipation, and obviously I know a lot of the seasons and cyclical things that I've listened and learned from Tony. But I will get that book, The Fourth Turning. Yeah.
By Strauss and Howe. Yes.
Fantastic. I will definitely look that up. But coming to the book, Moments Matter, that obviously our talk is coming to the end, and I could talk for many more hours with you, Dave, and maybe we'll do another opportunity another time, because I know you speak on so many different platforms. But where can people get their book? I will, by the way, post it obviously in the LinkedIn when I send it out, but where predominantly can they get it right now if they just listen to it?
The easy place is Amazon, right? Okay. So you can go to Amazon and get it. But if you want me to sign it and personalize it, you can just go to my website at davesandersonspeaks.com. I'll be more than happy to ship one. I ship them to Europe all the time. Yes, it takes about 10 days to get there. Yes, it does. Yeah. But I'll be more than happy to ship them to any place right now. I love the personalized books for people, but you get the ebook, you can get, the audio book will be coming out here about 6 months. But right now, Amazon, or just email me or go to my website. Well,
yes, I think I need to get that, because obviously we know each other. I think I might get a personalized, copy. That's great. And obviously they can get hold of you from your Dave Sanderson Speaks. Yes?
Or LinkedIn, because as you and I talked about, I put new content out every single day on LinkedIn. Yep. And then I also put it out, because we talked about modalities, on my Alexa Daily Flash Briefing on Amazon. So people can hear it and they can also see it on LinkedIn.
Very good. Very good. Well, as you say, there's a book in this 20 minutes talk now. You could write an ebook, a book just on those distinctions. Dave, I'm just so honored and blessed to have you on and to reconnect again over the years that we've known each other. And we will stay in touch, which we do anyway through LinkedIn. Thank you for your time, your graciousness, and just for being you.
Thank you very much.
Very grateful. Take care and keep safe, keep well, and keep enjoying life.
Thank you.